Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on a Tuesday on the 440 Sports Network. And again, we are across all digital platforms, including YouTube, at Stillman and Co. on YouTube. We're up over 700, well into the 700s in subscribers. I'd love to get to 1,000 by the end of the week. So hit that subscribe. I'm just going to keep saying that over and over and over and over again. So I want everybody out there to know that. And off and away we are running here on Tuesday. So we will save some time to be able to get to some of your reaction today on the chat, which we will hit up. And again, we want to boost that subscriber total. And I have been told by Braden Gall, apparently it is a process when it comes to getting a podcast on Apple Podcasts to start with. They want to make sure it's not some robot trying to sell crap, which I can appreciate. Apparently, it should be up on Apple Podcasts maybe today, maybe tomorrow. If you think it's driving you crazy, trust me, it's driving me crazy. So the story right now that we're going to start off with surrounds the Tennessee Titans and head coach Brian Callahan. Again, that is the story, plain and simple. I mean, we can get into the Denver game and we can talk about how Chimray DK did on special teams. And look, I was impressed with Chimray DK, but that's not the story. The story is the coach. And yesterday I explained the painful reality that a lot of Tennessee Titan fans are living with. You may not know you're living with this, but this is the reality that you and the team are living with. Because there was a huge sentiment, I don't know if it mattered that it was amongst the fans or not, but at least with the owner, because there was a huge sentiment about the idea of giving Brian Callahan a second chance, and let's see what Callahan can do without Will Levis, and let's see what Callahan can do with Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker's players. Let's give him a second chance. Now, 1 week into the 2025 season, you know, I know, everyone knows, we all know he probably has burned up that second chance. One game. Isn't that amazing? But here's the unfortunate issue when it comes to Callahan and the mistake the Titans made. This is a January problem. This is not a September problem. I want to go back to last season because in March of 2024, I kept banging on the right tackle position. Right tackle, right tackle, right tackle, right tackle. I assumed they were going to take Joe Alt with the 7th overall pick, and holy crap, is he freaking awesome or what? But I assumed they were going to take Joe Alt to play left tackle. Left tackle's figured out. But they didn't have a right tackle. And Brian Callahan kept saying, I think there's something there with Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a. PT, and Jalen Duncan. And I was like, oh, God. And I went nuts in March of 2024. And people kept saying to me, but Jared, it's only March. And I kept saying, yes, but March is when you fix this problem. When you have an incompetent head coach, that's a January problem. That is not a September problem. When you don't have a right tackle, or you don't have a quarterback, or you don't have any position, that is a March problem, not a September problem. By week 3 of last year, Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a. PT, had been sat. Jalen Duncan was in, and the Titans were even admitting, yeah, we can't fix right tackle at this point. Rand Carthon, the one interview he did with the Tennessean, was like, well, people aren't letting go of good tackles. No shit, Rand. That's why in March, I kept saying, go get a right tackle. Because the reality was, you were stuck. Once you made the decision in March and April that PT was going to play right tackle, you were stuck. Now let's go to today, September 9th, 2025. You're stuck with Brian Callahan. Plain and simple. You are stuck with Callahan as a head coach. You know, I know, everybody who watches the Titans knows that Callahan at this point is not cut out to be a head coach in the National Football League. And I'll be honest, I don't even know if he's qualified to be an offensive coordinator who calls the plays in the NFL, because I haven't seen good enough play calling from Callahan over the first 18 games he's been the coach. But I'm going to give you the unfortunate reality. I'm going to shoot you straight. And I bet this has to be very hard for doctors, especially oncologists, especially that have to sit there and say, this situation is inoperable. This is terminal. You don't want to hear this, but I'm going to tell you. At this point in time, there is nothing that the Titans can do realistically to fix the Brian Callahan issue. I'm sorry. I kind of feel like the media has kind of moved off of Callahan, because yesterday and Sunday it was all banging on Callahan, and now it's like they want to talk about something new, with the exception of Robbie Stanley, who is just banging on Callahan. Everybody else, it's like, well, we've talked enough about Callahan and how incompetent he is, and so let's start thinking about week 2. Let's move on. Let's talk about how Cam played. Again, let's talk about Chimray DK and how he played on special teams. Let's talk about the Rams. Let's talk about because they know the Titans aren't going to fire Callahan. No matter how much you say they got to fire him, they know the Titans are not going to fire Callahan. So I think a lot of people in the media feel it would be irresponsible for them to have conversations or discussions about whether or not the Titans should fire Brian Callahan. Some will say it's only 1 week. So the media has said, hey, let's kind of move on to the next thing here. Let's, leave that clock management issue in the past. Let's leave the whether or not he knew the rules in the past. I'm like, that's the story, because that is pure and total incompetence. And yet this is the reality. You don't want to hear this because the fans want to talk about Callahan should be fired immediately, Jared. Who should they bring in as coach? Who do you want to be the head coach of the Titans? Well, you can't really get anybody right now to be the head coach of the Titans. That's reality. You decided to give Callahan a second chance. And once you gave Callahan the second chance, which, again, I had no opinion on this. I said, bring somebody in to actually run the football operation and let them decide, which, of course, the Titans did not do. But once you decide to bring Callahan back, hey, you're stuck with him. And you only make it worse if you're not sure that he's a good head coach by drafting a young quarterback for him to work with. The Titans have wasted the 2025 season. It's 1 week, and I'm here to tell you, we all know Callahan can't coach. They know it too, by the way. They won't say it. They know it. Some people will say, well, Jared, it's only 1 week, but do you think Brian Callahan all of a sudden is going to change from what he was last week, next week, or the week after that? Come on now. This wasn't a one-off. Callahan sucks as a head coach because he's not very good. So they've wasted the 2025 season. And I know, God, that hurts. It is painful to think about 1 week into the season to know, yeah, they've already lit this year on fire. And this year is the first year of Cam Ward's development. And they've wasted that too, because they felt like they had to give Brian Callahan a chance after last year. Whether that was Amy Adams Strunk, whether that was Chad Brinker, whether that was Burke Nighthill, whoever's calling the shots, who knows? And yet, as a Titan fan, it cannot be more depressing than the sad reality that the jury is ready to come back on the head coach after week 1. He can't coach. And as I said yesterday, if he can't coach, he can't develop Cam. And if you can't develop Cam, then 2025 is a total waste. There are 16 more games to go. And there is pretty much nothing that the Titans are going to get out of this season. This is the NFL. This is not hockey, where a coach gets fired, and in the NHL, a team can fire their coach on Tuesday and on Wednesday hire somebody else, stick him behind the bench, give him a 3-year contract, and now you're the next head coach. And even if you could do that, which you can't, it's not like Cam Ward can just start running Mike McCarthy's offense tomorrow. And I would say most of the people that you're going to want to hire to replace Brian Callahan probably have jobs right now in other organizations. There will be 7 head coaches who are fired at the end of this year, on average. 6 if you count Callahan, because you're not going to fire him and then hire him. So there's going to be 6 guys who are currently head coaches in the NFL who will get fired. You could hire one of them. But I don't know who that is. There are guys who are on the shelf right now waiting it out, like Mike McCarthy. There are up-and-coming coordinators. There's kind of the one that I've circled since the day they hired Mike Borgonzi, which is Matt Nagy, because he comes from Kansas City, and so does Borgonzi, and Matt Nagy's been a head coach, and Matt Nagy's been to the playoffs twice with the crappy-ass Bears, so maybe he's I don't know. But again, this is a January discussion, not a September discussion. The September discussion to be had is the only real option for the Titans, which, again, they're not going to do, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't just openly discuss it. And that would be to fire Callahan and to make Mike McCoy the interim head coach. Mike McCoy is a senior offensive analyst, and he's really one of 2 people that's qualified to be the interim head coach if they were to fire Callahan. The other is Bones Fossil, the special teams coach. But again, he's running the special teams. Mike McCoy's not doing anything. So Mike McCoy is the senior offensive analyst, can take over, and it doesn't completely upset the apple cart because he's not diverting his attention from special teams or diverting it away from the defense or whatever. Mike McCoy is really the only option. He was once head coach of the Chargers. He's been a career offensive coordinator and play caller. They could fire Callahan and make Mike McCoy the offensive coordinator / head coach tomorrow. But does Mike McCoy get you excited about developing Cam Ward? And I'm going to say the answer is no. That said, I would take Mike McCoy, a veteran head coach with experience, over Callahan, who the only head coaching he does is in over his head coaching. But even putting in Mike McCoy, who I don't know from a jar of Vicks, that feels like a Band-Aid. That feels like a temporary solution to scratch the itch of, oh my God, this coach is a moron. I don't think that it changes the overall problem that you have, again, which is a January problem, which is you don't have a competent head coach to develop your rookie quarterback. That's what this year was supposed to be all about, right? You guys told me, Jared, we're going to stink, but we care about the development of Cam. Well, this guy doesn't even know the rules. This guy doesn't know how to manage the clock. I actually didn't see this because I was going down to my phone and I was like tweeting out when I saw Cam Ward at the end of the first half start to walk back on the field after the Jim Ray DK kickoff return. And I started tweeting out, Brian, kick the field goal. I did not see it on TV. Bones Fossil had to run down with 3, like, hey, coach, kick, you idiot. That's how sad it is. And again, the only option you really have, the only true option, the nuclear option, is Mike McCoy, and that is, again, a Band-Aid. Because at the end of the year, he's going to be fired, and the whole coaching staff's going to be fired because they can't coach a lick. And so they'll all be fired, and you'll go get a new coach. So Cam will start from square one next year, and call me then. And isn't that depressing? Because just like last year, when the Titans fucked up at tackle, and they were going through that revolving door of PT and Jalen Duncan and John Ojukwu and Leroy Watson and even some guy named Isaiah Prince, I kept saying that was a March problem that the Titans assumed would be fine in September. This, your incompetent head coach, this is a January problem. And this is a January problem that should have been addressed in January. 2 years ago, Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie sat down with Nick Sirianni, and they discussed how 2024 had to be different from that disastrous 2023 season. And guess what? The Eagles changed both coordinators. They brought in Vic Fangio. They hired Kellen Moore. Had Sirianni not been willing to make those changes, Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the Eagles, would have fired him. Plain and simple. And we know that because at the end of the 2020 season, Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman met with Doug Peterson, who was the head coach, and they told Doug Peterson, hey, these are the conditions for you to keep your job. And Doug Peterson said no. And they fired him. So the Eagles, a year removed from going to the Super Bowl, and a season that in which they made the playoffs, sat down with their head coach and said, if you want to keep your job, you got to make some real changes. And that head coach went on to make real changes. This year, the Titans told us Callahan needed to change. I was told by somebody when everything went down with Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker, and I was told, hey, Callahan knows he's got to make some changes. In fact, Brian Callahan is the first one who will tell you he's got to make some changes. I said, okay, let's see what those changes are. His change? A rock, paper, scissors, and tug of war competition that was going to solve the penalty issue that Jeffrey Simmons immediately blew off. The one change he actually made to the coaching staff, he made kicking and screaming, and that was the special teams coach. And what's crazy is, if any move Callahan has made in a year plus of coaching has worked, it's the changing of the special teams coach, who also, again, from appearances, kept Callahan from botching the end of the first half for a second time on Sunday. Maybe Bones Fossil should be the head coach. I don't know. But the reality is, one weekend, the Titans should know deep down inside that they made a massive mistake in retaining Brian Callahan. That, again, and I don't understand what this is about the Titans, but for some reason, they feel like everybody deserves a fair chance. This is the NFL. And in the NFL, life is not fair. If Brian Callahan had been canned after one season as head coach of the Titans, there would have been people out there that would have said, how can you do that? But the truth is, coaches get fired after one season in the NFL all the time. It's usually not the good franchises that do it, but guess what? San Francisco fired their head coach after one season in 2 consecutive years, and then they hired Kyle Shanahan. It'll be okay, folks. But nope, not the Titans. Everybody has to get a second season. Rand Carthon, who proved to be absolutely incompetent in his first season, got a promotion heading into year 2. The Titans know. They won't say it, but they know. Deep down inside, they know they should have never retained Brian Callahan as the coach. And the fact that it took one game to prove to everybody that, yeah, that's a fuck up, is a really, really, really bad spot to be in. And if you're looking for someone to blame, I guess blame Amy, because she's the owner and the buck stops with her. The problem with blaming Amy is that it is a futile exercise because, as we are all aware of, there are no consequences for another Amy Adams Strunk mistake. The only consequence that exists when Amy makes an earth-shattering mistake, which unfortunately she seemed to make a lot of, is to make us sit through another wasted season and hope and pray that she gets it right with the next coach that she hires for Cam Ward. And I know. You all want to be excited about the season. But you know deep down inside Callahan can't coach. And you know if Callahan can't coach, not only will this team not win games, but they're not going to develop the quarterback. So now I hope everybody knows why all offseason I had such a negative tone about this football team. Because I knew this was going to be the reality. Even if I didn't expect the verdict to be so clear by week 2. So that's the first thing. Again, I think the media is ready to move off of Callahan and talk about other stuff. And I think all the fans want to talk about is firing Callahan, which the media knows is not going to happen between now and the Rams game. I'm here to tell you it's not going to happen. But it is depressing. I'm telling you that I empathize with you, and I am a fan, so I feel this too. I empathize with the pain with which I know you guys are going through, wanting to be excited about a football season, and just knowing deep down inside, yeah, with this guy as coach, there's nothing positive that's going to come of this. So the second topic I want to hit on today, and I want to use a word with Brian Callahan that is a big word, and so few of us actually have it, and even less of us have the ability to get others to have it. And that word is accountability. For a large portion of our society, and I don't know exactly why this is, but for a large portion of our society, it's really hard, if not impossible, to say, I fucked up. And an even larger portion struggles to say, you fucked up. And I just don't know why. Why is it so hard to put your hand in the air and say that you screwed up? And for Brian Callahan, holding others accountable has been something that I believe he is completely incapable of doing. Yes, he yelled at Will Levis in week 2 of last season after he'd already cost him one game and was on his way to costing him another. But that's not really holding somebody accountable. Yelling at somebody and saying, why are you doing that? That's not really holding somebody accountable. And last year, Callahan had the problem with his coaching staff with Colt Anderson, whom it felt like he could never hold accountable. Didn't demote him, didn't fire him. Even if after 2 weeks of that season, it was painfully obvious that Colt Anderson was incompetent. He just kept running Colt Anderson back out there. So apparently the Titans have a director of game management and strategic initiatives. His name is Rob Reiterer. And according to Kaharski yesterday, he sent out a tweet saying, while the buck stops with Brian Callahan, director of game management and strategic initiatives Rob Reiterer also failed on the non-challenge. PK continued, he's in Callahan's ear and also has to know the rule and should have been telling the coach the right thing to do. So again, I don't know Rob Reiterer from a jar of Vicks. He could walk into my house today and I wouldn't know anything about him. But if he's the director of game management and it's his job to be on the horn with Callahan, shouldn't old Rob have told Callahan to challenge? In fact, Paul and TD asked Callahan about that yesterday. Here was Brian Callahan yesterday when asked about this game management aspect to all of this.
There are other people who may have been able to tell you, hey, go ahead and challenge that. What happened there?
That process and how those things get relayed, I'll keep those in-house. But I'm the head coach of the football team, and my job is to make those decisions. And I didn't do a good enough job in that moment. I should have challenged it, and it probably would have resulted in a potential explosive play. So should have challenged the play.
But your interpretation of it being incorrect, the interpretation of Rob in your ear is also incorrect. He's there to correct you or counsel you, and he's also not getting it right in the moment, correct?
Again, I should have challenged the play, and the communication and how those things happened are all part of the process that we got to do a better job of overall. But I'm in charge of that, and I didn't do a good enough job there. So, again, I should have challenged the play.
I should have challenged the play. I'm in charge. I'm the head coach of this football team. Bring it to me. I have to ask, does Rob, the director of game management and strategic initiatives, does he know the rules? It's a totally fair question to ask. And while yesterday Callahan made it abundantly clear that he's not going to throw anybody under the bus, and that can be admirable in some instances, I have to ask, if the director of game management doesn't know an NFL rule, shouldn't he be fired? Again, I understand not wanting to throw your guy under the bus. I understand not wanting to get up there and say, Rob Ryder is the one who fucked it all up yesterday, and we're going to run his ass out of here. But at the same time, if somebody on your coaching staff has one job and they screw up that one job so badly that it makes everybody across the country think that you yourself need to be the one who gets replaced, then doesn't that person need to be thrown under the bus? That's where I go back to Callahan and holding people accountable. If I hired somebody to be the rules expert and they got a rule wrong in an NFL game, there are 17 of these. We get fired, all of us, based on the results of these 17 games. Everything else is meaningless. Your YouTube videos, your Pee-wee program, your off-season charity donations, your team dinners and meetings with season ticket holders, it doesn't mean anything. The only thing that matters are these 17 games. If you are hired for these 17 games to know the fucking rules and you don't know them, you should be fired. Period. But Callahan can't do it. Callahan can't do it. He can't look at this rules guy who clearly wasn't in the right, because he should have been saying, challenge it, coach. And if Callahan didn't know the rules and Callahan said, no, Rob, it's not just an elbow, it's an elbow and a foot, Rob, the rules expert, has to say, you're paying me 6 figures to know the rules, and I'm telling you, you're wrong. Sometimes you have to make an example out of somebody. I believe Callahan should have fired that guy yesterday, and he should have announced it to everybody. And again, while it is throwing somebody under the bus, sometimes to prove that you've got the muscle of, hey, if I flex, I can hold you accountable. Sometimes you have to do that. And I just don't think Callahan has it in him. And I understand. I'm calling for some guy who's not even an assistant coach. He's a director of game management or whatever to be fired. Some guy I've never met, some guy I know nothing about, some guy, again, who could walk in here and I wouldn't know who he is. But I need to see from Callahan that he actually can hold somebody accountable. I need to see from Callahan that when somebody egregiously screws up as badly as this guy did, that he can actually hold that person accountable and do something about it. Again, I don't think coaches should just be throwing their assistants under the bus all the time, but sometimes, for the sake of everybody else, you've got to call a spade a spade. I'm not in favor of murder, really of any kind. But I didn't have a problem with Saddam Hussein's death by hanging for his crimes against humanity. If Callahan wants to throw this guy under the bus because he cost them a big first down and a big explosive play in one of the 17 games you get, he would be completely and totally justified in doing so. And I have to ask, how many jobs are there where you can screw up so poorly with the stakes being what they are? This isn't like it's a baseball game. And, we made the mistake of bringing in the reliever, and the rule book says that if you bring in the reliever, he has to, and I'm the manager, and I should have known the rules, but I was confused about the rule, and so we had to go throw Bartolo out there because he was, but we'll go get him tomorrow because it's one of 162. There are 17 games. The stakes are so high. Guys get hired and fired all the time in this league because of stuff like this. So I have to ask, how many jobs are there where you can screw up so badly, maybe cost your team the ball game, maybe get your coach fired, and still keep your job? For instance, could a doctor continue to employ a nurse that was so bad at her job that she got somebody killed? I don't think they could. Could a law firm continue to employ an associate who blew a major trial for them? Hey, I know you cost us this big multi-billion-dollar case and we're losing clients left and right, but you did your best. Again, with an avoidable mistake. Could a hospital employ an ambulance driver who doesn't have a license? Of course not. But this isn't a hospital. This isn't a law firm. And this isn't, apparently, a doctor's office. No. This is Callahan land, where it's okay that everybody is doing the best they can and that repercussions for incompetence are few, if any. Just ask Colt Anderson, who got 15 extra games after he proved how inept he was last year. And while during a press conference during training camp in which he was asked about Jeffrey Simmons and the lack of accountability, Brian Callahan wanted us all to just assume that even though we can't see him hold Simmons accountable, he does hold Simmons accountable. Well, Brian Callahan has to understand the benefit of the doubt is no longer on his side. He's 3-15 as a head coach. Again, he said, I know that you don't see me hold Simmons accountable, but inside the building, I hold Simmons accountable. Yeah, where were you in the fourth quarter on Sunday when Simmons was hurting the football team? I don't give Callahan the benefit of the doubt anymore. I need to see Brian Callahan hold people accountable to believe that he can actually do it. Because there's no head coach. There's no CEO. There's no self-owned business owner. There's nobody that can run a successful organization if you can't hold anybody accountable. And if you've got a director of game management who doesn't know the rules and you keep him employed, then what kind of standards do you have? If his game manager is back in the booth on Sunday, with all due respect, we'll have our answer. So I do want to get to some of your reaction. Jeff says, Callahan doesn't hold anybody accountable. I agree. That's the hard part. Jenny says, Jared, call out Amy right now to clean house and fire them all tonight. I mean, I've been asking Amy Adams Strunk to clean house on the Titans for 2.5 years. They played a game on the road at Jacksonville. I want to say this was either right before Thanksgiving or right after Thanksgiving. I can't remember. I want to say it was the week before Thanksgiving of 2023. They played a game on the road at Jacksonville and just got shellacked. And the coaching was awful and the team was awful. And if you remember, Amani Hooker was matched up in the slot. And I like Amani Hooker. He's a solid player, but he was matched up in the slot on Calvin Ridley. And Trevor Lawrence just threw a touchdown. It was a beatdown. And I said that day on my radio show I said, if I owned the team, I would be prepared to clean house at the end of the year, which means Vrabel would be gone and Rand Carthon would be gone. And we'd start over and we would hire a veteran football guy who's been a general manager before to run the operation, and we'd let him run it. And everybody called me racist because for some reason there's this weird belief, and this is why we're all stuck with Callahan for 16 more games. But there's this weird belief that everybody deserves a fair chance. This is the NFL. Nobody gets a fair chance. Rand Carthon did not get a fair chance coming to a team in which the head coach was a well-established alpha with this incredible amount of credibility from the national press about how great he was in spite of his warts. But just because it's not fair doesn't mean that what's in the best interest of the football team isn't to axe both of them. Last year, I said, blow it up. Go get a veteran, experienced football guy, put him in charge, and say, run the operation. If you want to keep Callahan, keep Callahan. If you don't want to keep Callahan, we'll fire Callahan tomorrow. And again, the Titans, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Amy blames one person for everything and then completely and totally half-asses it every year. And so we're going to have to go through 16 more games of Callahan. And after the 16 games of Callahan are up, then they'll let Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi hire a coach, and they'll get to hire the coach. And this time next year, they'll probably be getting ready to blame them. The Titans need to stop being fair, and they need to start doing what's in the best interest of the Titans. That's what they need to do. But when you say, hey, Gav, Amy, fire all these people tonight, number one, she's not going to do it. Number two, if she does it, Mike McCoy's your head coach. Woo! And number three, every time I say this is what they should do, they go do the opposite and promote Rand Carthon. So, I mean, give me a break here. Mitch in Bellevue says, Jared, have you heard the call on the radio for Restrepo to play? So I'm going to guess I did hear on Robbie and Rex Road a guy, his name is Gorilla. And I do like Gorilla, although he's such a homer. And I did hear him call into the Robbie and Rex Road program. And I did hear him say that they need to put Restrepo in there. I mean, guys, if your coach doesn't know the rules, Xavier Restrepo is not going to change anything. In fact, there are a lot of people in the media that I think owe me an apology, and a lot of Titan fans whom I think owe me an apology because I said Xavier Restrepo is not an NFL player. Bryce Oliver is who you should be talking about, not Xavier Restrepo. And it was like, hey, he's Cam's best friend, Jared. And I'm like, right. But he's a slot receiver who doesn't play special teams, and he runs a 4.8. That is not going to save you. I do think they should play Bryce Oliver more. Again, I don't know how much that's going to change things if you don't know the rules or you don't know how to manage the clock. But I do think that will at least help a little bit. Adam in Portland chimes in and says, Callahan is dumb and he's going to make Cam look dumb. Look at how frustrated Cam was. He knows he just can't say anything. I think that's a problem with 99% of the quarterbacks out there who fail. Maybe 98. I'll give 2%. There's the 1% that is Peyton Manning, that is Joe Burrow, that can be good no matter who the coach is. Joe Burrow could be good no matter who his coach was. He had Ed Orgeron in college and won a national title. He had Zach Taylor, who I think is a total boob, and got to a Super Bowl in Cincinnati. Peyton Manning had Jim Mora Sr., if you remember, playoffs. He had Jim Mora Sr. at the beginning, and after year one, they were 13-3 in year two. Those are the two guys that I think have just, hey, I'm here and I'm going to solve all your problems. And other than that, I think a young quarterback needs a good coach and a good system in place in order to be able to succeed. And then I think there's the 1% that no matter who their coach is, if Don Shula was their coach, or if Vince Lombardi was calling the offense, or if Bud Grant was, that it wouldn't make a difference. And that's Johnny Manziel and some of these other guys who just, I'm sorry, they suck. But for the most part, I actually think that when it comes to quarterbacks and it comes to the way that quarterbacks develop in this league, you need a good coach who knows what they're doing around that young quarterback, and you don't have it. Now, every now and then, teams can bring in a new coach to help save the young quarterback. That's what Ben Johnson has been brought in to do in Chicago. He's been brought in to help save the young quarterback. We'll see if it works. Looked good through 3 quarters last night. Boy, I was crapping on J.J. McCarthy. I fell asleep, woke up, saw J.J. McCarthy turned in to Joe Burrow last night. But J.J. McCarthy's got a coach. Again, young quarterbacks need coaches. Young quarterbacks need structure. Young quarterbacks need everybody around them to do their job so they can worry about their job. Think about who all let Cam down on Sunday. His number 1 receiver couldn't catch the ball. His number 1 running back fumbled the ball. His head coach doesn't know the rules. His head coach decided to have him drop back on 3rd down from his own goal line with under 30 seconds to go in the first half and try to throw a pass. I actually think the offensive line did okay, so I'm not going to dog on them too much. But look at who all failed Cam on Sunday. He can't do that 17 times. You need an operation where you make it easier on Cam, not harder. But once you decide that you're going to stick with Callahan in January, and once you decide you're going to draft the young quarterback, you're stuck with that decision and there's no changing it. Jonathan says, as Dan Orlovsky pointed out, the Titans would have won if the receivers hadn't dropped 8 passes. Well, let me start with this. Number 1, I think Dan Orlovsky is a hot taker. I do not take Dan Orlovsky seriously when it comes to his analysis of football. He'll be like, you watch the tape and the tape tells you but I think he's really just Skip Bayless, who was once a backup quarterback. So that's my overall theory on Orlovsky. I see a lot of talk about Cam and about people that have done the film studies and the breakdowns and there's this weird thing that I guess, hey, it's your business, not mine. But I'm not losing my pants over how Cam played on Sunday. I was impressed with his poise and his demeanor. I was impressed with the fact that outside of when Brian Callahan decided to go tempo with 7 minutes to go in the game, down by 1 score, again, I don't understand what Callahan was thinking, but most of the time, I don't know what Callahan's thinking. The Pee Wee program's going to solve the penalty problem. Boy, that worked out. But outside of that, he was cool, he was calm, he was collected. Made some rookie mistakes. Again, his footwork drives me crazy. There was one he threw on the sideline to Gunnar Helm where he put the ball on the money. Like, just put it right on the money. And yet his feet were pointed out like this, and I'm thinking to myself, Cam, square yourself up. I know you made a good throw there, but you can't do that consistently in the NFL. That being said, I was impressed with how Cam played. But it wasn't like Cam lit it up. And I do think context is important. So when we go over the receivers and we see all the drop passes, it is fair to say, hey, the receivers need to catch the passes. When Brian Callahan screws him up at the end of the half, we do need to take into the context that his coach doesn't really know what he's doing. But I'm not exactly sure that means that, what Cam did on Sunday was franchise quarterback worthy. Because to me, it wasn't. He still only threw for 112. He still only, threw for no touchdowns. Technically, he had 1 turnover, but that wasn't, at the end of the game. Who knows? But I don't think like, oh my God, did you see the national media guys that are hammering, saying how great Cam was? Cam wasn't great on Sunday. He was impressive for a rookie making his first start. He was not. I'm just going to be honest. really anything more than that. Mitch says, why doesn't the almighty Chad Brinker fire the offensive coordinator and bring in a new guy and take away Callahan's play calling duties? So I've heard some of this talk when it comes to Callahan and about, he's trying to do two jobs and he can't do them, be offensive coordinator and head coach at the same time. And it's too hard to be both. And it's, first of all, if it's not too hard for Kevin O'Connell, then it shouldn't be too hard for Brian Callahan. If it's not too hard for Sean McVay, then it shouldn't be too hard for Brian Callahan. It's not too hard for Andy Reid. It's not too hard for Matt LaFleur. It's not too hard for half the coaches in the league. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I don't think changing the play calling duties is going to change this. Again, if Brian Callahan has Mike McCoy calling the plays, and that is who I would give the play calling to. I hear a lot of people talk about Nick Holtz being the play caller. Nick Holtz's resume is not worthy of being an NFL coordinator. Bo Hardigree, I'd rather have call the plays. He did that with the Raiders. Mike McCoy, I'd rather have call the plays. He's been a head coach in the NFL, but he's been an offensive coordinator for like 15 years. But if you're going to make Callahan give up the play calling, what's that really going to change? Like all of a sudden when Io Manor catches the ball on the sidelines and his elbow hits down in bounds, is the game manager now going to know the rules when he didn't know the rules the first time? Is Callahan going to know the rules when Callahan didn't know the rules the first time? Again, I feel like you all know the answer to that. So the play calling duties in the OC position, that doesn't matter. None of this matters. Again, I don't want to be the one to just tell you how it is. But they made a January mistake by keeping Brian Callahan on as the coach. And now you have to live with that January mistake for 16 more games. Then you have to get to next January, not screw it up again, but they will because Amy hasn't made a right decision in 3 or 4 years. And then get to next January, not screw it up, and hope that whoever it is that you bring in can undo the damage that this coach is going to do to this young quarterback. Good luck. I do struggle with that a little bit. This idea that, oh man, it's just ready to say it's all over and we're just ready to pack it in for the year. Yeah. Because when you have a head coach that doesn't know the rules, you got to do something about it. Chase says, you hired him as an offensive guru to call the plays. Call the plays or kick rocks. Yeah. The offensive guru stuff is kind of tough for me because I did say, hey, this is the kind of coach you need to hire. You need to go hire one of these guys from the Shanahan, McVay tree, and you've got to see if he can develop. At the time, we thought was your young quarterback in Will Levis. Need to do something like that. And obviously, Callahan hasn't been the guy. But that doesn't mean that the offensive guru coach doesn't work, because the offensive guru coach does work in the NFL. I don't think it's my cup of tea. If I could make anybody the coach of the Titans, not that I would have done that, but if I could make anybody the coach of the Titans, it's been the coach of the Titans recently. For where this team is right now, it would be Mike Mularkey. Because he was an old school guy with his old pawpaw coaches. And was he the best coach in the world? No. But he was a realist. He took the bullets. He helped teach a young team that had been the worst team in the league. He had teach them how to win. He wasn't a guru. He wasn't trying to be. He wasn't Belichick, and he wasn't trying to be. And that's what the Titans need. They need a ball coach. And I'm not talking about Vrabel. I'm talking about an old school guy who, puts his little plastic play sheet inside of his shorts, wears long sleeves in 200-degree heat because he doesn't want to get a farmer's tan, and is just an old grinder. And hey, we're going to do things the tough way. That's what they need. Not Vrabel, who's self-obsessed about his own ego and how much everybody around him kisses his ass. And not Callahan, who's spending too much time kissing everybody else's ass. But a real ball coach. The other thing I'm going to say is at some point, the Titans and Titan fans need to realize that they've been in this cycle of suck ever since they fired John Robinson when they were sitting in first place, and they had been to the playoffs 3 years in a row, 4 out of the last 5. They had won the division back-to-back seasons. They were en route to winning it for a third time, and they fired him. The Titans have to realize just because firing somebody might not be fair after one season doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do. They should have fired Ran Carthon at the end of the 2023 season. They knew he was inept. And I know they argued against it. And hey, they even told me, you'll see, you'll see, you'll see. But they knew he was inept. I don't know how you could have seen the way he handled that draft night press conference when he told the media to be positive, and you couldn't think to yourself, this guy's incompetent. Or the free agent class of Aaron Brewer and Andre Dillard, and think to yourself, this guy stinks. Instead, they gave him a promotion. With Callahan, last year he didn't do a damn thing that proved that he could be a head coach in the NFL. He was hired by Ran Carthon, whom you just fired. So I go back to this, which is, why'd you keep him? And I think a lot of people felt like the Titans should have kept him simply because, well, it's not fair. It's not fair to fire a guy after 1 year. It doesn't matter if it's fair. It's the NFL. Would it have been in the best interest of the ball club to start fresh? To get in a new head coach, especially if you knew you were going to draft a quarterback? Would it have been fair to fire Ran Carthon after that first year where he and Vrabel didn't see eye to eye and the team got worse and they had Andre Dillard at left tackle? Maybe it wouldn't have been fair, but it would have been in the best interest of the ball club. So at some point, if they want to get out of this cycle of suck, a lot of people think it means they need to stop firing people. I don't think it's that. I think it's that they need to be more aware of what they have internally and then make the call. You had him for an entire season last year. If he's so incompetent that he doesn't know the rules and doesn't know how to manage the clock, you, as football people, Chad Brinker, Bryce Wasserman's Amy's son-in-law, he reports directly to her. He's in that building. He's chief of staff or whatever the hell his title is. You got to say, hey, I know it's 1 year and I know we got to pay out this contract. This guy can't coach. But they can't do it. And at some point, they're going to have to just give that up. At some point, they're going to just have to admit it and say, hey, we fired a coach after 1 year. People will be mad about it because people are always mad. But they need to just accept it. And I'm sorry to say, when it comes to the season, knowing there's a game on Sunday, wanting to be excited, most cases when you go 0-1, your season's not over. The Patriots one time lost by 30 points to Buffalo in week 1. I think they finished that year 14-2 and won the Super Bowl. But this team is not. Not with this guy as the coach. Not with the lack of accountability that is just running rampant through that organization. So until they change, it's going to be more of the same. And 2025 will be a wasted season. Okay. I want to hit the weekend that was, because it's a little different, where I don't just have 4 hours to fill like I used to have 4 hours to fill in the past. And so it'd be okay, let's do the main topic, and we do the main topic. And then after we do the main topic, then we've got some side topics off the main topic. And then after an hour and a half, we go and repeat the main topic again. We don't have to do that anymore. This is a podcast. It's a little different. So I want to hit the weekend that was. Number one, the great Mike Vrabel. Did anybody else watch the New England Patriots lose to the Las Vegas Raiders at home to the actually great coach, a should-be future Hall of Famer, Pete Carroll? I thought Mike Vrabel was so good. I thought It was the Titans that were holding Vrabel back. I thought the Titans were the ones who were morons for getting rid of Mike Vrabel because he's such a good coach. The great Mike Vrabel. And yet he lost to the Raiders. And now in Boston, there are questions about Vrabel trusting his offensive coordinator, Josh McDaniels, whom he didn't hire. There's talk about whether or not Drake May is progressing or whether or not they're putting too much on his plate and they don't know what to do and how to manage a young quarterback. It's one game, and unlike the guy who replaced Vrabel, Mike Vrabel did not make a total fool out of himself on Sunday. But I told you so. Everybody ran with the narrative that Mike Vrabel was some sort of incredible coach because the Titans made an AFC championship game once. Jeff Fisher couldn't coach for shit, and he made 2. That great Mike Vrabel, who just lost to Geno Smith and the Raiders. Again, not that Geno Smith is a great quarterback, but he's also not a bum. He's an average quarterback. The great Mike Vrabel, who spent all that money in free agency and lost to the Raiders at home, is 6-19 in his last 25 games. The great Mike Vrabel. Speaking of Mike Vrabel, how about old Pawpaw Bill Belichick in North Carolina? Bill is not allowing Patriot scouts into the North Carolina program. Here's what Bill had to say on Saturday when asked about, wait a minute, hold on. Why are you not allowing Patriot scouts into your building to scout your players? Here's what Bill said.
I'm curious, and this is away from the game, but we haven't heard from you yet on this. Obviously, reports this week of New England Patriot scouts being banned from practice. Just want to give you the opportunity to comment on that and provide some sort of explanation on that.
Yeah, well, no, it's clear that I'm not welcome there around their facility, and so they're not welcome in ours. Pretty simple.
Oh, you told them, Bill. I cannot believe it. Here's what drives me crazy about this, because deep down inside, how much do I care about UNC football? Really, I don't care about UNC football at all. But here's what drives me crazy. For 30 years, Belichick paraded around like he was special, like he was more disciplined than you, like he was smarter than you, like he was more dedicated to winning and more dedicated to football than you. And the truth is, Bill Belichick's just like all of us. Except Bill had the luck of drafting Tom Brady with the 199th pick in the 2000 draft. Bill is petty like us. Bill is a sore loser like us. And apparently, Bill likes a nice, tight 24-year-old rear end and perky tits like we do. But what bothers me is how Bill has become everything that Bill used to hate. For years, Bill hated selfishness to the point that when the New England Patriots would sign a player to a contract with incentives, the incentives were not individually based. They weren't based on your catches, your yards, but they were team incentives. If we get to the divisional round of the playoffs, you get a bonus. That way, you do your job. You put the team first, not your own interest. And yet, because Bill is mad that the Patriots fired him, Bill has decided that he's going to ban one of 32 teams from entering his facility to scout his players. Do you know what teams do when there's a fringe player in the 5th, 6th round, but they don't have all the information on the guy? They usually pass on him. Going to practice and seeing somebody's work habits, that's something that a scout can go back to a general manager and say, I was at the North Carolina practice, I saw Johnny Joe, and Johnny Joe busted his ass for his teammates. We should take him. The same way that Bobby Greer, who Bill fired, was the one guy who the Michigan coach Lloyd Carr said came and saw him about Tom Brady. Bill has become everything that he used to hate. Selfish, unaware, putting his own interests ahead of the team, and a loser. That's what he's become. For years, Bill was an asshole. And to some, he was a cheater. And I think Bill was okay with that. But now, I don't know how Bill would feel if 10 years ago you said you're going to become some selfish, unaware loser of an old pawpaw. Number 3, please get Ryan Clark off my television. Did anybody see the ESPN drama that played out this weekend where I guess after the Cowboys-Eagles game, they had a panel discussion and Peter Schrager chimed in, and I don't even know what Peter Schrager said, nor do I care. And Ryan Clark played the "you didn't play the game" card on Peter Schrager. And there were reports out there that Peter Schrager was such a big deal at ESPN that Ryan Clark was on thin ice. Apparently, this is the second time in months that Ryan Clark has had to apologize. He had to apologize to RG3 and RG3's wife because I guess, again, I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically said that RG3 doesn't understand black people because his wife is white, which, again, I don't know how you get there, but that's what he said, or at least that's what it's been conveyed to me that he said. Can I ask that we get Ryan Clark off the TV? Can I ask that we get former players that don't really know what they're talking about off the TV? And here's why. Because I don't care about the controversy, and I really don't care about Ryan Clark playing the "you didn't play the game, you're not allowed to talk about it" type speech. Derek Jeter ran the Marlins. They sucked. Michael Jordan ran the Hornets. They sucked. Isaiah Thomas is one of the greatest point guards in the history of the NBA. He was a terrible broadcaster, a terrible coach, and a terrible general manager. But he played the game. That doesn't bother me. That's stupid. What bothers me is I'm kind of sick of seeing Ryan Clark on my TV anyways. I never find anything that Ryan Clark has to say interesting. And the same can be said about Marcus Spears and Booger McFarland and Dan Orlovsky and a lot of these former players that they just put on TV. I never find any of the things they say interesting. It all feels so rehearsed. Every time they talk about the Titans, which isn't very often, it feels like they never watch the games. What are we doing here putting former players on TV who, again, weren't even great players? NBC is apparently going to pay Michael Jordan a fortune. And they're going to pay Michael Jordan a fortune so that he can go on NBC and opine about basketball. And guess what? I do care what Michael Jordan has to say because he's Michael Jordan. Ryan Clark is not Michael Jordan. Can we please get Ryan Clark off the TV? Can we please get all of these guys who are not interesting, who are not insightful, who were not great players? Can we get them off the TV for the sake of having them on the TV? I'd rather hear what Stephen A. Smith has to say than hear what Ryan Clark has to say. And that's because even though, again, I don't find Stephen A. to be the most knowledgeable person in the world, especially when it comes to football, he's at least interesting. And finally, I want to say this. I don't know about you guys. I am excited about the college football weekend we're going to have. And I'm talking about the college football weekend we're going to have locally. Because everybody knows Tennessee and Georgia are going to play on Saturday. They're going to get College game day. And that's great. But after that game's over, Vanderbilt plays South Carolina. And Vanderbilt is 2-0. And they kicked the crap out of Virginia Tech in the second half on Saturday. And that game's got real juice. And I've said for years, boy, it would be nice if Vanderbilt was good. I didn't expect it, but it would be nice. So on Saturday, At 2:30 Central Time, we get Georgia versus Tennessee. And there's no way to know if these two teams are any good or not because neither team has really played anybody. So we'll see. Georgia's the higher ranked team. Tennessee's at home. Georgia's favored, but who knows? And then after that's over, we get Vanderbilt at South Carolina. South Carolina is the 11th ranked team in the country. They are a 4.5-point favorite. They beat Vanderbilt last year. But after that second half I saw from Vandy, I don't know what we're going to see. I don't know what we're going to see. So I'll just say this. I'm excited for the weekend we're going to have in college football. And that's the weekend that was. That's going to do it for us today here on Stillman & Company on 440 Sports. Like and subscribe. Boost it up. Again, when I got on today, we were at like 750 subscribers. Get it up. We want to be up over 1,000 very, 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 very soon. So be sure to like, subscribe. Again, Braden told me Apple Podcasts, maybe today, maybe tomorrow. Also Spotify, Amazon, everywhere else that there are podcasts. And yes, I am aware of how big of a deal Apple is. That's the podcast I use. So just bear with us on that one. I hate this, but just bear with us. And then we get right to Apple Podcast, and you can listen on your way home and everything else. That's it for Stillman & Company. We will see everybody tomorrow right here, 440 Sports at